So I'm going to divide this talk into two halves. The first half is to try and discover where we are and how we are placed as Muslims in society as a whole and what this society is about. And in the second section, try and bring out one or two principles that might indicate a difference where there is friction between Islam and the Western model. Whilst Islam and the secular West are identifiable as two distinct entities, the same cannot be said of Muslims and the West. This is why I take issue with Muslims who advocate, and I quote, a Muslim mindset change, unquote. Because the Muslim mindset is now very much part of the global mindset. In this sense, Muslims are no different. The historical process of how we got here has been much researched and written about, and we should leave further exploration of this particular matter for another time and another place. But the fact remains that Muslims have bought into the Western myth of progress with a vengeance. In this sense, Muslims are no different to Norwegians, Nicaraguans, and Nigerians. Muslims do not have or do not live in Islam today. They live in a globalized world defined for them by other forces. The same people who advocate a Muslim mindset change also advocate a reform of Islamic education, and whilst accepting that there is much scope for improving the way that Islam is taught today, one has to say that Western education, in terms of the way that it has impacted on the environment and the social cohesion of entire populations, has been an unmitigated disaster. In the view of Professor David Orr, Professor of Environment and Politics at Ecology in Ohio in the United States, he says that the greatest polluters are the MAs, BAs, PhDs, and LLBs that the Western universities turn out. The university system, he is saying, has been at the root of the environmental destruction of the planet. By the simple virtue of the fact that they are the people who are the worst polluters because they are the highest earners. They are the best consumers and the most efficient polluters of the planet. We as a species have an infinite capacity for self-delusion, and the renowned Harvard biologist Edward Wilson observed that the human species is an environmental abnormality. Writing in the New York Times in 1993, he suggests that intelligence has a tendency to extinguish itself, and asks what other species would deliberately destroy its own habitat within a supposedly rational framework that justifies such actions. This capacity for self-delusion is epitomized by the way we use words like growth, progress, modernity. What do they mean? They are words we worship. I'm saying at the same time, they are the words that have let us down into this situation where Prince Charles, or dear Prince Charles, is saying that we have just 100 months left to change. So let's look at two of them in current usage, whose meanings and implications we have hardly examined. Let us take growth first. The agenda at the G20 summit meeting held in London early in April was about digging the global economic system out of the hole it has got itself into. The hole, it must be said, was created not exclusively by the bankers, although they are the people who, it is said, will give you an umbrella on a sunny day and take it away when it rains. They are goaded by consumer demand to create liquidity out of thin air, and the goading, it must be said, is done by the politicians. This is why, many years ago, when I had all my teeth intact in my mouth, that was some time ago, an old sage said to me, democracy is the service industry of the banks. Now, if I said this I used to say this 1 year ago, people say, what? And I had to explain it. But now, I can save my time, I don't need to explain it to you. You know exactly what I mean. Democracy is the service industry of the banks. Growth is essential for economic survival, and in this sense, the arguments between Keynesians and Friedmanites become irrelevant. The choice between fiscal stimulation, that is fiscal diarrhea, and fiscal constipation are false ones, and it begs the question of what economic growth has done to the planet. That this cannot be kept up perpetually would seem to be a common sense assumption to make, because planetary resources are finite, but the krona has yet to drop. Growth, standards of living, and GDP are the measures on which the success or failure of politics of today are built. As nation-states chase growth rates, someone has yet to come up with evidence that the planet Earth has grown since it was created 5 billion years ago. Still the same size. It may have changed, but has it grown? We now live in a degraded planet, and I quote, we have 100 months to change. What about this thing called progress? Ronald Wright, an essayist, uses the term progress trap in a book called A Short History of Progress. He postulates that this is the condition societies experience when, in pursuing progress, human ingenuity inadvertently introduces problems that the society does not have the resources to solve, preventing further progress. Social collapse is often the result, says Wright. And Wright counters the modern notion that progress is unconditionally a good thing. He argues that as an ideology, it is merely a myth. Humans see their own progress and advancement in the rapid transition from an industrial economy to an information-based one. Yeah, we have progress from the Industrial Revolution, information technology. So send all the industry to the poor countries, so we have that cheap produce, so we can go on to, so we can buy their clothes and we can work on the computers and exchange information worldwide. It's very nice for all of us. Okay. But he says, humans see their own progress and advancement in the rapid transition from an industrial economy to information-based one, while the reality is that the food technology of the late Stone Age is the only one we cannot live without. The food technology of the late Stone Age is the only one we cannot live without. The crops of about a dozen ancient people feed the 6 billion people in the world today, despite more than 2 centuries of scientific crop breeding, the so-called Green Revolution of the 60s, and the genetic engineering of the 90s. Not one new staple has been added to our repertoire of crops since prehistoric times. So if the crunch comes, all our mobile phones, all our technology, useless. What is useful is that thing that goes into our stomachs, and that was discovered in the Stone Age. As Karl Kraus said in his book, Half-Truths and One-and-a-Half Truths, and I quote, progress celebrates Pyrrhic victories over nature, unquote. So I have to then ask myself the question, can a way of thinking and being that created the problem also produce the solution? Can a political and economic model that is clearly responsible for the present state of the planet also produce the cure for it? What are the answers? At its very basic, here's a response to what I have just laid down. At its very basic, the difference between Islam and the globalized secular world order, in my view, could be reduced to 2 factors. One of these is our attitude to existence and our relationship with the natural world. The other is about that element which makes the world go around in a dizzy spin today, and that is money. Our attitude and how we created this thing called money that we use to lubricate the whole world order.